The glittering chandeliers of the jewelry store swayed ever so slightly, reflecting beams of light onto the polished marble floors. Customers browsed, employees smiled, and the world seemed to hum in a rhythm of wealth and elegance. But in the middle of that refined silence, something brutal shattered the moment. A sharp gasp filled the air as a woman, visibly pregnant, stumbled back, her hand clutched over her belly as she struggled to steady herself. The man who had pushed her stood tall in a tailored suit, his face red with anger, his voice low but poisonous. He was a millionaire, someone who owned companies, cars, and homes, someone who had everything except the decency to respect the woman who once believed in him more than anyone else. The jewelry store froze in collective horror, eyes wide, whispers buzzing like an uncontrolled storm. And then, the truth began to unravel in the most unexpected way, through a glittering necklace meant for his mistress. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and justice for those who are wronged, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel, Stories Collection. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that remind us of the power of resilience and love. She had once believed he was her protector, her anchor in life. When they first met, he had swept her into a world she never thought she would see: dinners in five-star restaurants, quiet walks on private beaches, surprise flowers just to make her smile. To her, he was the man every woman dreamed of marrying. But the glimmers of love had long faded into shadows. Success had changed him, or perhaps revealed who he always was: a man who treated love like property and respect like an optional luxury. She had tolerated the late nights, the distant eyes, the excuses that smelled of perfume not her own. But nothing could have prepared her for the day he shoved her in public, dismissing her as if she were an inconvenience instead of the mother of his unborn child. The store's owner, a dignified older man with eyes sharpened by decades of business and an unshakable sense of justice, stepped forward. He didn't just see a customer and his wife, he saw a crime. He saw a vulnerable woman nearly falling to the ground, holding her belly to protect a life that hadn't even taken its first breath. He called out sharply, and in that moment, everything changed. "Enough," he said, his voice like steel cutting through glass. Without hesitation, he reached for the phone behind the counter, his eyes locked on the millionaire. "This is assault. I'm calling the police." The millionaire laughed, the kind of laugh that echoed with arrogance. To him, money had always been the answer, the shield that protected him from consequences. But arrogance crumbles quickly when truth begins to shine. Because sitting in the store's glass display, waiting for pickup, was the glittering evidence of betrayal: a diamond necklace, expensive beyond imagination, carefully engraved with words that didn't belong to his wife. The necklace was reserved under his name, but the note inside the box exposed everything. "To my one true love, forever yours." It wasn't addressed to his wife. As police sirens approached, the weight of his double life began to collapse around him. The mistress, the betrayal, the arrogance, it was all laid bare in front of strangers who once admired his wealth. The pregnant woman, his wife, stood frozen. Not because she hadn't suspected, but because seeing the proof was like feeling the knife twist deeper in a wound she had been trying to ignore. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't cry for herself. She cried for the child she carried, for the innocence growing inside her that deserved more than this brokenness. The officers entered swiftly, and the jewelry store, once a sanctuary of elegance, turned into a courtroom of truth. Witnesses spoke, employees whispered details, and the owner handed over the necklace with steady hands. The millionaire protested, flashing his money and connections like a weapon, but none of it mattered now. Evidence was heavier than pride, and the law was not blind. He was escorted out, his suit no longer a symbol of power but a mask of shame. But the story didn't end with his downfall, it began with her rise. The pregnant wife found herself surrounded by kindness from unexpected places. The store owner checked on her with fatherly concern, ensuring she was safe. Strangers offered her seats, water, even warm words of encouragement. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something she thought she had lost: hope. The road ahead was not easy. Divorce, healing, rebuilding a life while preparing to welcome a child into the world, it was overwhelming. But strength often blooms from the cracks of despair. With the necklace as evidence, she had the courage to step into court and fight for her dignity. With witnesses ready to testify, she had the power to ensure the truth was known. And with the love growing inside her, she had the reason to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Months later, as she held her newborn child in her arms, she realized that life had given her more than heartbreak. It had given her a second chance. She was no longer chained to a man who belittled and betrayed her. She was free to raise her child in a home filled not with wealth, but with peace, love, and honesty. And that, she realized, was a treasure far greater than diamonds and gold. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that no one deserves to suffer in silence and that every woman and child deserves respect, please like this video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your engagement means more than you know, and it helps spread stories that inspire change. Speech Balloon Special Request. Comment below what part of this story moved you the most. Your words might give courage to someone who needs it today. The millionaire, once untouchable in his wealth, was now a figure of contempt, his hands cuffed and his chest heavy with guilt. His once powerful posture slumped, a stark contrast to the man he had been moments ago, the one who had strutted around with a sense of invincibility, thinking that his money could shield him from the consequences of his actions. The arrest was just the beginning of his downfall. There were more eyes now, more people aware of the deceit he had lived for years. But for her, the woman who had once been blinded by love and who now found herself standing at the precipice of a new life, there was no feeling of triumph, only a deep, quiet sorrow. As the police car pulled away, its sirens fading into the distance, the store returned to a quiet calm, but the damage had been done. The woman, her hands resting gently on her belly, took a deep breath and looked at the necklace one last time. It sparkled under the harsh fluorescent lights, its beauty undeniable. Yet, for all its brilliance, it represented the lies and the hollow promises he had given her. It would never be the gift she had once hoped for, one of love and devotion, but a symbol of everything she had lost. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The voice of the jewelry store owner broke through her thoughts, and she looked up at him, grateful for the kindness in his eyes. She nodded, though her heart ached with uncertainty. He offered her a seat, gently leading her to a plush chair near the back of the store, where the hum of the world outside seemed so far away. She could feel the quiet tremors in her hands as she sat, the baby inside her kicking lightly against her ribs. She had to be strong. The store owner, a man who had worked in luxury for most of his life, had seen his share of high-profile clients, but never anything like this. Never a woman so clearly broken, a child so obviously affected by the stress and trauma of betrayal. He had seen people buy diamonds to celebrate weddings, to celebrate love, but today, he had witnessed the cold sting of a love gone sour. Still, he didn't leave her side. He made sure she was comfortable, that she had a drink, and he even offered to help her make calls, family, friends, anyone she might need. The minutes felt like hours, and yet she couldn't seem to make herself leave. The shock of the moment was too raw, too fresh. She needed to breathe, to center herself, but the weight of what had happened hung heavy on her chest. She had always known something wasn't right. He had grown distant, colder, and more unpredictable. But even in those moments, when her gut told her to leave, she had stayed, for the child, for the life they had built. She had given him the benefit of the doubt, told herself that perhaps, like so many couples, they could work through it. But this was something different. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a deliberate betrayal, a calculated disregard for her well-being and the life they had created together. The store owner returned after a few minutes, having made sure the authorities were on their way and that she was safe. His next words were quiet, but they struck deep. "You don't have to do this alone." Those words, simple as they were, felt like a lifeline. She wasn't alone. She still had her dignity. She still had her strength. The road ahead would be long, filled with legal battles, heartbreak, and painful decisions. But in this moment, she knew she had to take control. No more living in his shadow. No more hiding behind his wealth and his arrogance. As the police arrived and took her statement, she stood tall, her hands resting on her swollen belly, her eyes unwavering. The millionaire would face the consequences of his actions, but she was done being a victim. She was done being his pawn in a game she never wanted to play. The following weeks were a blur of paperwork, courtrooms, and moments of quiet introspection. But with every step, she grew stronger. The support from friends, from strangers who had witnessed the abuse, and from the community around her became a pillar of strength she had never imagined. She realized just how much she had underestimated her own resilience. Every decision she made, whether it was contacting an attorney, seeking therapy, or simply choosing to go to work each day, was a testament to her growing courage. In court, when the day finally arrived, the truth was undeniable. The evidence, not just the necklace but also the testimonies of those who had seen the push in the jewelry store, was overwhelming. The millionaire's world of lies crumbled as quickly as it had been built. For the first time in years, she felt free, not from the courtroom, but from the chains he had wrapped around her heart. But the hardest part was still ahead, motherhood. As she looked down at her growing belly, she couldn't help but wonder about the future. Would her child grow up in a world of love and security, or would they inherit the same toxic patterns that had plagued her own life? She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for sure. She would give her child a life of honesty, respect, and unconditional love. Months later, in a small, peaceful home, she held her newborn daughter in her arms. The soft light from the window bathed them both in a golden glow. This was the beginning of something beautiful, a new chapter, written not in the shadows of betrayal, but in the light of her own strength. And as she gazed into the eyes of her child, she realized that the pain of the past had led her here, to this moment of peace, this moment of love. If this story has touched your heart, and you believe that every woman deserves to stand tall and free, no matter what life throws their way, please like this video, share it with someone who may need a reminder of their own strength, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support keeps stories like this alive, inspiring others to rise above their challenges. Speech Balloon Special Request. We want to hear from you. How do you think we can better support those who feel trapped in toxic relationships? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Your words might inspire someone to take the first step toward a better life.